Hello and welcome to Frontington. In this video I'll be doing some measuring, some cutting, some clamping, some drilling and some screwing. In my previous video I was testing out an Arduino-based DCC base station in readiness for the rebuild of my model railway, and that was all very successful, and not nearly as scary as I'd feared. However, after I posted that video, I got chatting to some folks on Facebook who pointed out a bit of controversy surrounding LaisDCC, suggesting that their decoders are pirated copies of old chips developed by DCC Concepts, and that legal proceedings are still underway. Now, I don't know the details of this, and it's not for me to cast judgment on what's happened there, but needless to say, I don't now feel confident recommending LaisDCC decoders. Not so much from a performance point of view, but certainly from an ethical point of view. Other decoders are available, though maybe for a pinch more. Just something to bear in mind. Now, time to move on to the boards that this new layout will sit on. Here's the latest track plan. If you watched my planning video a few weeks back, you may spot some differences. The layout of Frontington Station is now much more realistic in portraying a branch line terminus. The goods yard in particular is a lot better thought out, with more interesting features and exciting opportunities for realistic operation. I'm really excited that I'll have room for a proper cattle dock, and a coal yard, and a crane. I've also increased the radius of those end curves to the equivalent of second radius, which is a huge improvement. The layout still takes up the same amount of space though, with a total length of 3.3 metres and a depth of just 1 metre. Now, that may not be big by some standards, but I'd still like this to be built on multiple smaller boards that fit together, rather than it all being one board. With that in mind, I've split the layout into these 5 sections, which will make things more manageable. And thanks to some tinkering on a 3D CAD program, I've also planned out how each board will be constructed, taking into account things like where point motors will be going and where the track will be cut. The plan is that all of these boards will be fixed together and will sit on what I'm referring to as a subframe, which will provide more strength and will have the actual legs. The first step, of course, was to buy some wood. For the top surface, I'm using this 9mm ply. It comes in a standard size of 2440mm by 1220mm. If you want that in different units of measurement, here it is in feet, miles, furlongs, hands, micrometers, and pieces of string. Choose the unit you identify with most. You'll find sheet wood at this size in pretty much any timber yard in the country. Now, I want to make the most efficient use possible of this wood, so here's how I'm going to divide it up. This gives me 2 long sections of 1400 by 500mm for boards 4 and 5, a 700 by 1000mm section for board 3, and by combining these 2 sections I get another 700 by 1000mm section for board 2. I don't have enough left over for board 1, but that's non-scenic, so I can use any old offcut for that. And the same for the fiddle yard. I'll probably reuse wood from the old layout for this. So, having marked out those dimensions at a scale of 25.4mm to the inch, it's now time to cut the plywood. I'm supporting it on both sides so it doesn't fall on the floor and get scratched or broken or run off and join the circus or something. I'm also using this straight piece of wood as a guide, clamping it in the right place so that I get a nice straight cut with my jigsaw. Thankfully, it all gets more manageable the smaller the pieces get. And clearly numbering each piece also makes things easy to keep track of. Next, I've got some timber that will be fixed underneath to strengthen each board and help prevent it flexing too much. Now, I've seen people use really thick, heavy-duty timber for this, but I really don't think you need to. This has a cross-section of 12 by 44mm. In this orientation, given enough length, it's reasonably flexible, but not in this orientation, and that's the direction that matters. There's just enough depth to safely get a screw into it, and hopefully just enough height to keep the board from flexing. And of course each board is going to be sitting on top of that subframe too, which will help to keep everything flat and secure. I'm drilling pilot holes for each screw, just to make things a little easier. The screws themselves are 4mm diameter and 30mm long, so I'm drilling a pilot hole that is 2.5mm diameter to reduce the chance of splitting, but so there's still plenty of wood for the thread to cling onto. Oh, and a quick tip if you don't have a countersink drill bit. If you're careful, you can achieve much the same effect by using a drill bit as large as the screw head and just drilling a few millimetres into the wood. In my case, I used an 8mm drill bit in a hand drill, and it seemed to work just fine. Well, that's the first board done, and I'm pleased to report that it's plenty sturdy enough for my needs. I mean, I'm not going to be able to walk around on top of it, but it'll be perfectly adequate for a model railway. I also discovered that if I tap the board in just the right place, it'll spontaneously duplicate itself. I definitely recommend using magical wood for your layout if you can find it at a good price. Now that the boards are built, I want to ensure a good solid fit between them. So after clamping two adjacent boards together, I'm drilling a hole through both frames so that I can put a bolt between them and hold them tight. This will be easily removable in case I need to remove just one board and work on it away from the rest of the layout. And it means they'll definitely go back together in exactly the same alignment. And these look pretty good for now. I'll give the edges a quick sand to remove any rough edges, but other than that, they'll just be stored away for now, until the subframe is built. And to do that, I'll need to take apart the existing layout, which is slightly terrifying. So tune in next time to see how I get on. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out. Well, that's all for now. See you next time.